Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Larry Brennan. I was 51 years old the day I was told I had become obsolete. That morning started like any other. Coffee brewed. Shirt pressed. Keys in the same dish they'd always been in. I had worked at Triventa Solutions for nearly 16 years, and every day felt like clockwork, until that one didn't. It was a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that carries no warning. And yet, looking back, the signs were there. Troy Ellison, our new regional director, had barely concealed his disdain for the legacy hires, a term I once thought was flattering until it was used to mean the ones we're looking to replace. Troy was the kind of man who used words like disruption, lean strategy, and digitize the experience in every other sentence. A 35-year-old MBA-groomed fast-tracker with slicked back hair, Bluetooth in one ear, and no idea how our clients actually worked. I'd spent my career building relationships, real ones. I was the guy who flew out at 2 a.m. when a manufacturing partner had a supply chain meltdown. I sent condolence cards when a client's spouse died. I called the janitor by name and always shook the receptionist's hand. That didn't matter to Troy. "Larry, we need younger talent who will work for half your salary," he said that morning, sitting behind his glass desk like a smug prince. "You're too expensive for where this company is headed." No emotion. No respect. Just the cold recitation of a decision he'd already made weeks ago. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Instead, I extended my hand, looked him in the eye, and said, "Thanks for the clarity." He seemed almost disappointed at my calmness, like he wanted a fight. But what he didn't realize, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that I wasn't angry. I was already calculating. As I packed up my office, Lisa from accounting popped in. She'd been there almost as long as I had. "You okay?" she asked, eyes flickering toward the closed door down the hall. "I'm better than I look," I said truthfully. "They think they're replacing loyalty with TikTok followers," she muttered. "It's a mistake." She didn't know the half of it. Because while Troy was busy making slideshows for the board, I had something he'd never have, a memory filled with names, numbers, kids' birthdays, and promises made over handshakes, not emails. Troy had a team of interns and algorithms. I had people. And people don't forget who showed up when it counted. As I walked out with my single cardboard box, I wasn't carrying loss, I was carrying leverage. My daughter, Ellie, called that night. "They fired you. After everything you did for them?" "It's okay," I said. "He thinks he's saving the company. He doesn't realize he just handed me the best opportunity of my life." She paused. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the list I'd scribbled on a napkin, 10 names, circled in red ink. "I'm going to remind them who they really trusted all these years." I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was anxious, but because my mind was clear. Sharper than it had been in years. Troy thought firing me would be the end of my story. What he didn't realize was, he had just turned the page to my real beginning. The next morning, I drove past the Triventa Solutions building. Not to see it one last time, just to remind myself how small it really was. Not physically. Philosophically. They thought numbers replaced people. That spreadsheets could mimic trust. I had no intention of fighting for what was no longer mine. But what Troy didn't understand, what the board never grasped, was that clients don't stay with a company. They stay with someone. And for the last 16 years, that someone had been me. I sat down at my kitchen table with a fresh notebook, a cup of black coffee, and a single mission, to list every client who'd ever said, "Larry, I trust you." I didn't pull up a CRM. I didn't use LinkedIn. I remembered. The first name I wrote was Glenn Rathers, VP of Procurement at Landon Techs. I'd helped his daughter get an internship after her college withdrew funding. He never forgot that. Second was Debbie Fong. She once said I was the only reason she stayed with Triventa after a massive delivery screw-up. I'd hand-delivered a replacement order on a red-eye flight. By noon, I had 23 names. Not just clients, relationships. I drafted a simple email template. No hard pitch. No dramatic farewell. Just one honest message. I've moved on from Triventa Solutions and started a new chapter. If you'd like to stay in touch, here's my direct contact info. No pressure. Just gratitude. Then I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Victor Tran, the co-founder of Belmont Edge, a mid-size firm that had just secured Series C funding. I'd heard they were expanding fast. We met at a diner that Thursday. Victor remembered me immediately. You kept our operations running during a 2-week blackout when the data center collapsed, he said, shaking my hand like we were still in the trenches. What happened at Triventa? New leadership, I said simply. They wanted cheaper talent. Said I didn't fit their future. Victor raised an eyebrow. So what are you planning? Something better, I said. He nodded slowly. We just opened a new client relations department. I'd want someone like you to build it. That evening, he emailed me a formal offer, senior partner in client strategy. Full autonomy. And best of all, no non-compete clause in my exit contract could stop me. I'd had a lawyer look it over the day I was fired. I was free. By the end of the week, I had already heard back from 12 clients. Where are you now, Larry? Can we talk? Are you taking on new partnerships? No flashy pitch. No PowerPoint. Just one truth, they'd trusted me, not a logo on the wall. The silence in Triventa's hallway the day I left. That wasn't resignation. It was the calm before the storm. And Troy? He had no idea it was already heading his way. I never thought I'd owe my career rebirth to being fired. But that's exactly what happened. Victor Tran's offer at Belmont Edge was just the beginning. The real spark came from a name I hadn't written on my client list, but should have. Janice Adler. She wasn't an executive. She wasn't even a client. She was a gatekeeper. Janice had been the personal assistant to Eli Bannon, CEO of Clarion Steel. For 12 years, I never once bypassed her. Never demanded. Never guilt. Never acted like her time was less valuable than her boss's. I always said please. Always said thank you. And that's why, the Monday after my firing, I received an email from Janice. Larry, I heard what happened. Eli isn't happy with how Triventa's been treating our account lately. I told him where you are now. He wants a call. That call happened the next morning. Eli didn't waste time. We'll move our entire portfolio to Belmont if you're the one managing it, he said. I don't care what the cost is. My hands trembled slightly, not from excitement, but from the weight of what was happening. Clarion was one of Triventa's flagship accounts. If they left, it wouldn't just hurt. It would cause internal bleeding. And Troy? He still thought this was about his spreadsheets. I gave Eli my word that his transition would be handled quietly, ethically, and with care. Within days, contracts were being redrafted. Janice helped coordinate every call, every handshake, every dotted line. That same week, 2 more clients reached out. Quietly. Respectfully. The same way I'd always handled them. No drama. No threats. Just one question. Can we come with you? And here's the twist Troy never saw coming. I didn't ask for a single one of them. They came to me. Because when trust is built over years, not even a pink slip can sever it. Friday, I got my first real sign that Troy was losing control. Lisa, my friend in accounting, texted me from inside Triventa. Emergency board meetings happening. Troy told them you hacked the CRM. They're hiring outside auditors. I laughed out loud. Because I'd never touched their CRM. I didn't need to. My Rolodex was in my memory. My leverage lived in birthdays remembered, favors done, 2 a.m. phone calls answered, and silent sacrifices never invoiced. Troy thought he'd fired a name on a ledger. He'd actually severed the artery of his own business model. And now, the board was starting to realize it. Later that night, I got a call from someone unexpected. Harold Drake. Triventa's founder. The man who built the company from a folding table and a phone book. He had retired 3 years ago, but apparently, he still had enough shares to make people nervous. I heard what happened, he said. It's been an interesting few weeks, I said, carefully. Larry, he said plainly, they made a mistake. I warned them when they brought in Troy. He thinks business is built on conversions. You and I know it's built on people. There was a pause. Are you coming for them? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I'm building something better, I said. He chuckled. That's the worst kind of revenge, he said. The kind that doesn't even look like revenge. I ended that night with 10 more emails in my inbox. Not from clients, from staff inside Triventa. Some wanted to follow me. Some wanted to warn me. But they all said the same thing. This isn't the company it used to be. And I was beginning to realize. Maybe it never had been. Troy thought firing me would cut costs. Instead, he triggered the most expensive mistake of his life. By the start of the 3rd week, I had moved 5 major accounts from Triventa to Belmont Edge, quietly, cleanly, and by the book. Each time, I made sure to follow one iron rule. I never reached out first. That wasn't strategy, it was integrity. I wasn't burning bridges. I was showing my clients where the real road had always been. But now it was time to stop playing defense. I called a meeting with Victor Tran and the executive team at Belmont. Let's talk expansion, I said, laying a thick folder on the table. If we move fast, we can secure at least 10 more accounts by the end of the quarter. But I want full control over the client strategy team. No interference. No red tape. Victor glanced through the folder, eyes widening slightly at the names. These are Triventa's biggest accounts, he said. No, I corrected. They were Triventa's. Now they're looking for stability. I explained my plan, not just to onboard them, but to build a new service model around what Troy had ignored completely. Loyalty. We'd assign a dedicated advisor to each account. Keep personal notes. Return calls within 2 hours, always. I wasn't pitching disruption. I was restoring value. Victor didn't hesitate. Approved, he said, signing the directive on the spot. Back at Triventa, the dominoes had started to fall. Lisa texted again. Troy's having daily calls with the board now. They've hired a PR firm. Their terrified clients are going to start posting about leaving. He told them you started a whisper campaign. I smiled. Funny thing about whispers, they don't work unless people are already listening. That Friday, I received an official cease and desist letter from Triventa's legal team. It was filled with bluster, accusations of interference, vague threats, demands I stop soliciting proprietary relationships. I handed it to Victor and our lawyers. This is smoke, our counsel said. They have no fire. If they had evidence, they'd have already filed. Still, I wanted to be thorough. We scheduled an internal audit, every call, every email, every contact, just to ensure our house was clean. And it was. Because what I was building wasn't just revenge. It was bulletproof. That weekend, I got a message from Caroline Holt, a VP at Eastmark Tech. She was a wild card, high profile, cautious, and fiercely loyal, until you gave her a reason not to be. And Troy? He'd given her 3. We've had 4 project delays in the last 2 months, she said bluntly on the call. No follow-up. No accountability. I thought you were gone for good, Larry. I was, I said. But I landed somewhere better. And we don't let our clients chase us for updates. She was quiet for a long beat. Send me a transition outline, she finally said. And keep it discreet. By the following Monday, Caroline was in. And Triventa? They were hemorrhaging. What Troy failed to understand, what the board was just starting to grasp, was that firing me didn't just remove an employee. It detonated a fault line under their entire relationship structure. Because I wasn't the asset. The trust I'd built was. And trust, once shaken, doesn't come back with a rebrand and a discount. That night, I called my daughter Ellie again. How many now? She asked, practically breathless. 8, I said. Maybe 10 by end of week. Does it feel good? I paused. No, I admitted. It feels right. There's a difference. There was silence on the other end. Then. I'm proud of you, Dad. I hadn't heard that in a long time. It hit harder than I expected. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. Copper Blues. It doesn't need to get uglier. Troy Ellison. I stared at the message for a long time. It didn't sound like a man in control. It sounded like a man circling the drain. Copper Blues. Downtown. A polished little spot where the city's wannabe moguls went to feel important over overpriced cappuccinos. I arrived 15 minutes early, took a seat at the back with a clear view of the entrance. I wanted him to see me before I saw him. I wanted to study how he walked, if he walked like a man in control, or a man unraveling. At 9:05 a.m., Troy Ellison walked in. Tailored navy suit. Designer watch. But his posture gave him away, shoulders tight, eyes darting, smile too quick. He spotted me and approached, smoothing his tie as if that could pull his composure together. Larry, he said, sliding into the booth. Thanks for coming. I didn't reply. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. We're not enemies. I tilted my head slightly. You fired me, Troy. I didn't realize that was an act of friendship. He gave a forced chuckle. Business is messy. You know that. Only when people who don't understand it start making decisions, I replied. His smile faltered. Let me be direct. The board is upset. Clients are leaving. They're tracing it back to you. I haven't solicited anyone, I said flatly. They came to me. Doesn't matter how it looks, he snapped. What matters is that the board thinks you're dismantling the company from the outside. I took a slow sip of coffee. Maybe they should ask who lit the fuse. He dropped the smile altogether. Look, whatever Belmont is paying you, Triventa can double it. We bring you back, quietly. You consult. Stabilize the accounts. Everyone wins. It took everything in me not to laugh. Let me guess, I said. You still keep your job. I take the heat. You report the recovery as a personal success story to the board. Troy didn't deny it. I'm offering you a way back in. Respectfully. I leaned forward. This was never about going back. This is about moving forward, with people who respect what I built. He narrowed his eyes. Then name your price. Finder's fees. Client buyout agreements. Whatever you want. I shook my head. You don't get it, Troy. You fired a man thinking you were cutting costs. What you really cut was the spine of the company. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. You looked at a salary number and thought I was replaceable. But numbers don't call clients at midnight. Numbers don't show up at funerals. Numbers don't fix things when everything is falling apart. A flicker of panic crossed his face. Then came the desperation. The board thinks I can't stop this. They're talking about removing me. I need leverage, Larry. Then you should have kept me. He left after 10 more minutes of hollow threats and weak offers. I didn't give him the dignity of walking out at the same time. I waited, finished my coffee, and let the silence settle. Outside, I texted Victor and the legal team. He knows he's losing. Victor's reply came instantly. Good. Let him. That afternoon, Lisa called from Triventa. They brought in outside auditors. They can't find anything. I grinned. Of course they can't. I didn't take anything. But that's not the worst of it, she added. Harold Drake just flew in. The board called an emergency session. I sat back in my chair. Harold? That was unexpected. What's he saying? He wants to meet with you. Why? Lisa hesitated. Because they're talking about replacing Troy. That evening, I got the call. Larry, Harold's familiar voice crackled over the line. You've made quite a mess. No, Harold. I cleaned one up. There was a pause. They want to offer you Troy's job. My jaw tightened. I'm not interested. Another pause. Then what do you want? I looked around my quiet office. The calm. The control. The respect. I want a partnership, I said slowly. Belmont and Triventa. Joint services. No war. No layoffs. Just structure, respect, and long-term strategy. Harold didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was low, impressed. You're playing chess, Larry. No, I said. I'm playing legacy. The next morning, I arrived early at Belmont Edge. Victor was already in my office, leaning against the desk with 2 coffees and a knowing smile. They offered it, didn't they? He said. Troy's job, I confirmed. And full control. And you said no? I said partnership. He blinked, caught off guard. Larry, we could finish them. They're bleeding out. Why give them a lifeline? I stepped around him, opened the blinds, and looked out across the Phoenix skyline. Because I'm not trying to kill Triventa, I said. I'm trying to rebuild the part of it that mattered. He was quiet. Then, you really think they'll go for it? They don't have a choice, I said. They lost nearly 50% of their revenue in under a month. If this continues, there won't be a company left to run. I showed him the draft, a formal strategic partnership agreement. Shared clients. Shared revenue. Unified client relations under Belmont's framework, my framework. Victor read the proposal in silence. You're playing the long game. No, I said. I'm correcting the game. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Harold Drake and 3 members of Triventa's board in a private room at the Fairmont downtown. Troy wasn't present. The tension was thick. These were people used to feeling powerful. And right now, they were terrified. Your clients followed you, one board member said. But you didn't breach contract. Correct, I said. I didn't solicit. I didn't copy files. I didn't even log into your CRM. Then why are we here? Another asked. I slid the proposal across the table. To stop the bleeding, and create something better. They read silently. One of them raised an eyebrow. This gives you control of the client relations framework. Yes, I said. Because clearly, your current leadership doesn't know how to manage it. And what happens to Troy? I shrugged. That's your decision. I'm not asking for anyone's head. I'm offering a solution. Harold folded his hands. We brought Troy in to modernize. To cut costs. And in doing so, I said evenly, you nearly killed the soul of your company. There was a pause. Then Harold nodded. We'll call for a vote. Tomorrow morning. The next morning, I was in my office when Patricia Lennox, co-founder of Belmont, walked in with a fresh contract and a grin. Triventa just called, she said. They accepted every term. Effective immediately, we are now in a strategic partnership with one of our biggest competitors. And Troy? I asked. Resigned. Effective this morning. I let out a slow breath. Not in triumph, but in resolution. Not revenge. Redemption. 1 week later, I stood at a podium in a packed conference room, facing clients and teams from both companies. For 16 years, I said, I believed business was personal. And when I was told I was too old, too expensive, and too outdated, I took that personally too. But now, I see it for what it was, a chance to rebuild something stronger. The room was still. Behind the rows of suits, I spotted Lisa from accounting. And Harold. And even Ellie, my daughter, standing at the back, proud. This partnership isn't a merger. It's a declaration, I continued. That trust matters. That relationships matter. That people matter. A standing ovation followed. And somewhere out in the desert of Arizona, Troy Ellison, ex-director of Triventa, was likely staring at a phone that hadn't rung in days. Because in trying to erase me, he wrote the first chapter of my comeback. 1 month after the partnership launch, I arrived at the office just before sunrise. The city was still quiet, the streets half asleep, but inside, our phones were already ringing. Clients. Prospects. Even a few competitors. It was like someone had lit a beacon, and everyone wanted to know. Who's this guy who turned a firing into an empire? The answer? Just a man who did his job right. Every single day. That morning, I found a package on my desk. No return address. Inside was a photo frame, an old picture of me, Harold Drake, and 2 other early employees from back when Triventa was still called Iron Ridge Strategies. We were standing in front of a tiny strip mall office, proud and broke and hopeful. Taped to the back was a note in Harold's handwriting. People sign contracts with people. Never forget that. I placed the photo on my desk, where everyone could see it. It was never about glory. It was always about that. Later that afternoon, Patricia Lennox pulled me aside. We're being called the gold standard of client loyalty in this quarter's industry journal, she said, half laughing. Our retention rate's at 98%. It's almost unheard of. I told you this would work, I said. You did, she agreed. Then her voice dropped to something softer. And you never rubbed anyone's face in it. Not even Troy's. Revenge is cheap, I said. Legacy is earned. She smiled. Still, it must feel good, knowing that the man who thought you were too expensive just cost the company $78 million before he left. I looked out the window. It feels good knowing I kept my word. To the people who mattered. A few weeks later, I took Ellie out to dinner, just the 2 of us. She was glowing. Happier than I'd seen her in years. Everyone at my office is talking about you, she said. You're like some kind of business ninja. I laughed. I'm just a guy who never forgot a birthday or a golf tee time. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Maybe so. But you reminded everyone that being decent still matters. When I got home that night, I finally did something I hadn't had the heart to do since that Tuesday I was fired. I opened the box I'd packed that day. The box I'd carried out of Triventa like a man defeated. Inside were photos. Old files. A plaque I'd received for Client Excellence in 2014. At the very bottom, was a letter from my daughter from years ago, back when she was in high school. I miss you, Dad. I know your job is important, but I hope one day you'll have a job where they appreciate how amazing you really are. My eyes stung. That day had come. Now, I lead one of the most respected client-facing organizations in the region. The industry knows my name. Competitors study our methods. And more importantly, clients trust us. Because I never chased revenge. I chased respect. And in doing so, I proved what Troy never understood. Loyalty isn't built with cheaper contracts. It's built with time, truth, and the willingness to pick up the phone at midnight because someone needs you. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.